best way to honor him is to make sure I'm good and prepared today, and I am. And among the many Schultzyisms, and there were many, like the word reduplicate, which it made such sense when he said it, I had to look it up to see if it was a word. But there was another thing that he always used, a classic Schultzyism, whenever we worked a big game like a Grey Cup or a Super Bowl. And he always used to talk about the need for every player to have a personal preparation package. And I always sort of smiled and chuckled a bit as he said it. I knew he meant it in a mental and emotional way. But all I could think of when he said it is Championship Sunday, and in comes the player, nervous, to the dressing room, to the stall, and there on the stool is a personal preparation package. And I used to think as he said it, what does he mean? What's in the package? Is there like a shaving kit, Advil, maybe a pack of Oreos? It would all be personal and different for every player. But he emphasized the need for preparation. And as such, I want to tell you the extent of my preparation and my personal preparation package, and I got to be honest, these will come in handy. And this will come in handy as it has all week. You've noticed the Sharpies around, and for those who don't know, and I'm sure most of you do, computers, no, not for Chris. This was the way to communicate, writing everything down, so in his honor I have made a few notes here. I did cheat a little bit later and go with the computer, I'm sorry. But just a few instructions, some housekeeping before we start. Please refrain from using cell phones, but if you must, make all of your calls by typing in all 10 digits each time because you couldn't bother by storing contacts. Please reply to all emails by starting a fresh chain because you couldn't be bothered figuring out the reply button. And please, please, no social media. But if you must, treat it like a personal conversation that no one else can see, especially when you're fighting with someone. You know, Chris Schultz was actually, all kidding aside, good with a phone. My last conversation with him just a few weeks ago was a very somber one, as fate would have it, talking about another loss, especially within the CFL and TSN community, of Tony Darchie, who had passed away of a heart attack on February 8th. And Chris was deeply moved and very hurt by that as well. And I think of that conversation, which went beyond talking about Tony, our dear friend, but also about life. And, he lectured me about, taking better care of myself as I got older, and I'll never forget that conversation. The other conversation happened 11 years ago, halfway through the Olympic Games of Vancouver 2010. Anyone who has had the privilege of being involved in working in Olympics could probably identify to this. It matters so much. It's such a stressful assignment. You work so hard, and about halfway through, you do tend to hit a lull. The stress starts to mount. You're not sleeping as much. You're worried if you're doing a good enough job. And it does kind of get to you, and I wonder if he had a sixth sense. He wasn't involved, but my hotel room phone rang, and I picked it up, and the voice at the other end of the line was absolutely unmistakable. Like, Roddy, Schultzy here. And it was, hey, Chris, what's going on? How you? Don't talk, just listen. I think you're doing a fabulous job, but you got to keep going. You got to keep your energy up. You got to keep preparing. You got to keep working. You got to get your rest. You got to eat right. You got to go to bed early. No staying out late. This went on. It made me feel like I was getting coached. It made me feel like I was playing football again and getting a very stern but loving lecture at the same time. And then, after about a minute, he said, proud of you, okay? And then he hung up the phone. And that was it. And I never had a chance to talk, and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. And I gotta be honest with you, I mean, there's a humorous part of it, but also by the same time, I've tried really hard this week not to see that phone call as a metaphor of some kind. Because it's a natural thing to want to, you have those regrets about wishing that you stayed in touch with him more and checked in more, and as he would often do. And I will say this, we all knew He wanted it to be about you. He didn't want it to be about him. I'm not even sure how he'd feel about this day. But you know what? I am so grateful that today is all about Chris Schultz. And I'm going to probably cry, and I'll definitely laugh, and I'm going to enjoy hearing lots of stories and tell you a few stories as well. You know, most of us here can only think of him one way: big. The gentle giant who stood 6'8". Very few are here that know Chris Schultz so much better than that. Family. Before I ask Pinball to come up, I just have one more story, if you'll indulge me. And I wrote it, but I want to read it because I want to do it justice. It's my favorite Chris Schultz story. And it's not about his big heart, which was so big, and all the kindness. And it's not about his excellence on the football field, which was there, or even as a broadcaster. It's a wonderful act of fate that I will always remember. And it goes like this. Of all the working relationships I've seen involving Chris Schultz, the one I will remember most was the one he had with my good friend Dennis Barham. A TSN senior producer who oversees all our NFL coverage. Dennis and another dear friend who's here, Mark Millett, worked on just about every Super Bowl Chris ever went to. And they took care of him on every assignment, like he was their big brother and little brother all at the same time. Dennis stressed about every little detail about our Super Bowl coverage, and that includes Schultzy. And Schultzy cared about him too. I'm sure he would have done anything for Dennis, and by sheer accident, which was just so Schultzy, he gave Dennis the best day of his professional life. Dennis, you see, is the biggest fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers I know. He may be the biggest fan of any team in any sport that I know. Absolute passion. And 12 years ago, we were in Tampa for the Super Bowl 43, and the Pittsburgh Steelers were there to play the Arizona Cardinals. This is a great assignment in every way. James and I have been blessed to cover several of them, and you certainly don't dare complain because it's wonderful. But there's one thing that always did annoy me about it, and that was the inability to really study the end of the game, sometimes the most important part of the game. Because in order to be ready to go on the field after it's over, TV crews that are going live on the field had to be paraded from the media room to underneath the stadium, where you watch the final 5 minutes, if you're lucky, on a small TV. The game that year was so close, and Dennis, in addition to carrying all the stress of our live post-game show, was stressing over his Steelers as well, because it was a close game. And he wanted to get down to the entrance, down in the bowels of the stadium as fast as we possibly could, where hopefully we'd be lucky enough to watch the end of the game on a television and be ready to go. Well, as the massive line of media moved along, he looked back and he said to me, "Where's Schultzy?" And I said, "Well, he's right." You know, I've misplaced a lot of things in my life. I've misplaced car keys. I've misplaced my wallet, my train of thought. I've never misplaced anything who was 6'8", 300 pounds before. So I was feeling bad. But Dennis didn't even have time for an apology because this was stressful. We got to go on the field soon. And he was furious. Not so much at me, but just the situation. Where is Schultzy? So he took off looking for him. Now, there are certain, if you're looking for something that's 6'8", there's a better chance than average. And he did find him. He found him in a different line. He was standing near Biff Henderson. Remember Biff Henderson of David Letterman fame? You know, the show, part of that crew? Well, Biff was down there to do probably something comical, and he probably had VIP credentials. So Biff is in a different line. And I don't know how Schultzy ended up in that line, but he did. And Dennis reaches him, exasperated, and is grabbing him like, "Come on, let's go. We got to go here." And just as he did, you know, a security guard yelled at them, "Just you two, here, this way," to follow Biff Henderson's group. So they did. And they went right into the stadium, field level, fourth quarter, Super Bowl, featuring Dennis's favorite team while the game is still going on. And they ended up near Arizona's goal line. And they're standing beside Joe Namath, the MVP of Super Bowl III, who was there to present the Lombardi Trophy. Their credentials didn't allow for this. This shouldn't have happened. But there they were, to Dennis's amazement, I'm sure, as the Steelers down, the Cardinals had gone ahead, and the dramatic drive led by Ben Roethlisberger. Down the field they come, towards them. And there's down at that sideline, I think it was Arizona sideline, and their kicker is nearby and just staying loose. And they witness Roethlisberger to Santonio Holmes and the winning touchdown right on the sideline. And I think of that moment and what I would have paid to be able to just witness the look on Dennis's face, standing there and seeing his team win the Super Bowl in the final seconds. Joe Namath, one of the most unlikely stories in football history, standing beside Dennis Barham, who just witnessed probably the most unlikely moment he could ever imagine, and his giant of a friendly analyst, his good friend who'd inadvertently given him the biggest gift of his professional life. I will always remember that.